Are you excited about 5G technology that you hear about every day on television? If so, I want you to listen to the story of Daphna Tachover. Daphna, I welcome you today as the guest of our show.
Thank you very much, Hunter.
So tell us your background, Daphna. Where are you from, and what is this about 5G technology?
So my background, I'm from Israel, and I'm an attorney both in New York and in Israel. But before becoming an attorney, I used to be a telecommunications and computers officer in the Israeli Defense Forces. I managed the computer center for the military headquarters and operations center. So wireless telecommunications was my profession until one day, no warning signs, it made me very sick. In 2009, I lived in Princeton, New Jersey with my ex-husband, who is an MD, has also a PhD in molecular biology. He worked for the university, and we were about to have a family. I didn't want to continue and work for big investment companies in Manhattan. I wanted to be able to raise my children. And so I decided to open my own law practice. And so excited, I went to buy my new laptop for the new law firm. The thing is, while most women like to buy shoes, I like to buy wireless gadgets, and I always was the gadget person. So the most happy moment for me in starting a law practice was getting my new laptop. But when I came back home, weird things started to happen. I started feeling tingling in my hands when I was using the laptop, pain in my head. I would leave the computer and I'll be fine. I ended up changing 5 laptops in 3 weeks, and with every laptop I was getting more and more symptoms. I was getting heart palpitations. I remember with the 3rd laptop my ex-husband was talking to me, and it was if someone speaking Chinese. I couldn't understand what he was saying. And then also when I was trying to use my cell phone, I felt very sharp pain inside my brain. And all of these weird things started to happen, and I got very concerned. And the first search I did online was getting heart palpitation when using a laptop. And I'll never forget, I got to a Dell website, and there was a woman there saying that every time she uses her laptop, her fetus was kicking. Long story short, I became extremely intolerant to wireless. I ended up living in my car for a year because I could not be anywhere with wireless. I moved to upstate New York to live in an isolated cabins in the wood, so where I would not have exposure, and hopefully it will allow my body to heal.
Let me stop you just a second, Daphna. This is all taking place after 2009. Now, you're a very intelligent, educated woman, are you not? Where did you get your law degree?
I did my law degree in the UK, in England.
And then how did you get licensed in the United States?
So after finishing my law degree in the United Kingdom, in England, I went back to Israel, and I worked for the district attorney there and was licensed to practice law in Israel. And after a few years in Israel, I also did an MBA, and then I came to the US and I took the New York bar and started work for an investment company in Manhattan.
Were you married at the time, or did you get married after you were with the investment company in Manhattan?
I got married in the US. I actually met my ex-husband stealing Wi-Fi when nobody knew what Wi-Fi is.
Okay. So your ex-husband was a physician.
Correct, yes.
And he had as I heard you say, he was a medical doctor and he had a PhD in molecular biology.
Yes.
Was he the first one to educate you about the dangers of radiation frequencies from cell phones?
So 6 months, yeah. So 6 months before I got sick, one day, it was a weekend, we're sitting at home, and I was on the cell phone as usual, and my ex-husband was looking at me and said, "Daphna, maybe you want to take 10 minutes breaks between calls." And I'll never forget it. I just looked at him and I said nothing. I just smiled. And I remember the thought in my head was, oh, worst case scenario, I'll get a brain tumor when I'm 70 or 80. Everything causes cancer. And the thing is, at that moment in time, I did a risk-benefit analysis without knowing the risks. I didn't ask my ex-husband, who I think is one of the smartest people I know, what is it that you know that I don't know, that I probably should know? And 6 months later, I became very sick, not with cancer, with a different condition, also caused by wireless radiation, called microwave sickness.
What kind of symptoms were you having? And I'm thinking about numbness in the hand and tingling in the hands from handling the cell phone too long. Is that an accurate statement of what you start feeling?
Yes, the first symptom I got was tingling in my hands and my feet, pain in my hand, headaches, heart palpitations, sleep disturbances, tinnitus or other auditory effects, nausea, cognitive problems, memory problems. All of these symptoms has been established by many, many hundreds of studies going back to even before we ever commercialized cell phones. People are not aware, but in World War II, we started to use radars. Radars, just like cell phone, use microwave frequencies in non-thermal levels. And when our soldiers started to use radars, they started to complain about the same symptoms. And it was actually, the government started to investigate this. And in 1971, there was a report published by the US Navy showing 2,311 studies showing the adverse effects of microwave radiation, which is the same radiation and frequencies used for wireless technology. So we had the human evidence, we have scientific evidence to corroborate those complaints long before we ever commercialized cell phones.
So after 2009, you're now symptomatic from, is it fair to call it electromagnetic sensitivity? Is that what your body was experiencing, or what would you call it?
I don't like the word electrosensitivity. The condition is called microwave sickness or radiation sickness, because this is a sickness, not a sensitivity. And people are not born sensitive to this. I used this technology for years before becoming sick from it. And it's also causing severe physiological injuries to the body. We are electric beings. Our brain is electric, our heart is electric, our nervous system is electric, our cells communicate electrically. This is electricity, this is radiation, and so we're all reacting to it, even if we don't feel it. I just now started to feel it. And there was a study that was done on 700 people who developed this condition, and it shows that 28% had a broken blood-brain barrier from this radiation. It was actually our own Navy in 1975, a scientist in the Navy, Dr. Alan Frey, who showed that this radiation breaks the blood-brain barrier. 40% had inflammatory conditions, 23% had autoimmune problems, 100% had reduced levels of melatonin production, and basically we all have profound injuries from exposure to this radiation.
So what have you done as a result of gaining this knowledge about what these microwaves, and I think you call them non-thermal radiation, which means that they don't create the same heat level, for instance, that a microwave oven would create. These are little mini microwaves that we're holding up next to our brains. They're not giving off the same amount of heat, but they are adversely affecting the health of the population of the world.
So after becoming sick, I had to move to the Catskills to stay away from this radiation and allow my body to heal. And when something you used to love so much can destroy your life to such an extent, you want to understand how come you never heard anything about it. And as an attorney, I immediately started to research this issue, and the evidence I found was mind-blowing. As I said, thousands of studies showing beyond any doubt that this harms every system and organ in the human body. And then I heard that they put Wi-Fi in schools in Israel, and I literally could not sleep thinking that those children may become as sick as I have. And so I decided to try and do something about this. And in 2012, I submitted a case against the Israeli government in the Supreme Court of Israel to ban the use of Wi-Fi in the schools and replace them with wired networks, which are faster and safer.
Thank you.
After 3 years in court, we lost the case, not because we didn't prove the evidence, it's a long story, but through the case, we forced the government to adopt limitations on the use of Wi-Fi in schools, and Israel has become the first country in the world to adopt limitations on the use of Wi-Fi in schools. It is banned up to the age of 6. It's allowed 3 hours a week in the first and second grade, and up to 6 hours a week in the 3rd grade, Wi-Fi should be turned off at all other times.
Daphna, I hear you saying that Israel implemented restrictions in 2013 to protect children from wireless devices and the overexposure to radiation frequencies coming from Wi-Fi, cell phones, and other devices. Is that what I understand took place?
Yes, sir.
And you were involved in seeing that accomplished. Now, I'm bringing you back to the United States now. So what are we doing in this nation to protect our children and our young adults who got on cell phones, who had them put next to their beds to be used as alarm clocks, who some sleep with them at night? What are we doing to protect these children in America?
Not only we're doing nothing, we actually force this radiation on our children, in our schools, in our homes, using advertisement to make them more addicted to it. And our government, through the Federal Communication Commission, which is the agency that's supposed to regulate this issue, continue to lie to the public and say there's no adverse effect, there's no evidence, no scientific evidence, no human evidence, although we have thousands of studies showing that this radiation is harmful, and unfortunately we have the human evidence. Our children are sick, and they're sick from this technology.
You said we have the human evidence. Tell the audience, what evidence is there, and also tell the audience what is the group called We Are the Evidence.
So in 2016, after completing my Supreme Court case in Israel, I heard that the US government is going to fast-track the deployment of 5G technology. And in the interest of public health, I came back to the US to try and awaken America to what is really going on. And I started a group called We Are the Evidence, because not only we have more than ample scientific evidence, sadly we have the human evidence, and it is in epidemic scales.
Expound on that for me,
Yeah.
Daphna. What, when you say epidemic scale, what evidence is there that indicates we have an epidemic scale of disease and injury that's occurring to our young people and children?
So, maybe we start with cancer. So right now, the 4 top diseases that kill children and young adults are brain tumors, thyroid cancers, testis cancers, rectal cancer. Everywhere people and children hold and use their cell phones. We have breast tumors in women without genetic predisposition to have breast tumors. And the interesting thing is the tumors are spread the way they hold their cell phones in their bra, and they actually have bras with pocket for cell phones.
This is this is a marketing ploy for athletic women, joggers and exercisers and yoga students and young women. They put their cell phone in their bra. And you're telling the audience that there's now clinical evidence that shows that tumors are forming on the breast of the women that match the pattern of the cell phone radiation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly, correct. And it's especially with young women. And and we have brain tumors. We know Joe Biden's son, who got glioblastoma and told his family that the cause for his brain tumor is cell phones. Ted Kennedy, LeBron James, the basketball player, had a salivary gland tumor that was removed, and that is another tumor that has been correlated to the use of cell phones. Acoustic neuroma, those are tumors that are developing on the hearing nerve. Interestingly, there are already 6 court decisions from Italy that says that causation was established for developing these tumors as a result of exposure to cell phones.
Those Italian Supreme Court cases, those were actually occupational injury cases. Am I right on that? These were
correct.
And so the audience understands occupational injury means it was a worker in the course of his employment that had heavy exposure to cell phone use that developed this acoustic neuroma. Is that a fair description of these cases?
Yes.
And the courts in Italy found that there was a specific causation for the brain tumor caused from the exposure to the radiation frequencies from the cell phone.
Very true.
Is that a fair synopsis of?
Perfect, from an attorney.
So in the U.S., we would call it a workers' comp case, wouldn't we?
Yes.
So somebody who worked for AT&T or worked for Bell South, or even somebody that was a cell phone tester, because don't they have cell phone testers in these companies? Don't they have to sit there and test these phones all the time? So that would be an occupational injury if somebody got a tumor from testing that. That would be covered by most every state's workers' comp law.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to draw a comparison between what we would see or are seeing in the U.S. to what the Italian Supreme Court has already found.
Right, and the Italian Supreme Court made that decision already in 2013. And recently there was an appellate court decision confirming exactly what you just said. And the public need to understand, the public probably asks itself, how come they never heard anything about this? And it is because there's a very strong industry make sure that the public will not be aware that there is a problem with this technology and radiation. As I said, the Federal Communication Commission is basically telling to the public that there's no evidence of harm. But this is going, we've all been through the tobacco fraud. And sadly, we don't learn from history. But the wireless industry has been following the tobacco industry playbook and perfected it in various ways. And one of the things that the telecom companies, our industry has been doing is to take over regulatory bodies around the world. So in the US, the telecom industry controlled the Federal Communication Commission. The current head of the FCC is Ajit Pai, who is a Verizon attorney. The previous head of the FCC is Tom Wheeler, who used to be the head of the Wireless Industry Lobby Association, the CTIA. But the same thing is happening in the World Health Organization. So currently, countries around the world are following the safety guidelines adopted by an organization called ICNIRP. ICNIRP is a private organization funded by the telecom industry. And the WHO, the head of the EMF project in the WHO, in the World Health Organization, is an electrical or computer engineer who has no health background, but she used to work and do studies for the wireless industry on how to make cell phones more efficient. And the EMF project of the WHO basically adopted the...
So let the audience know, when you say the EMF, you're talking about...
electromagnetic fields.
Okay,
right.
Go ahead.
Okay. And and basically the EMF project of the WHO adopted the guidelines, the health guidelines of this privately owned telecom industry association, ICNIRP. And this is how the public is being misled to believe that this technology is safe, when in fact it is not. And we started to talk about the health effects. So cancer. There's another condition called microwave sickness, which is what I'm suffering from. Surveys that were done up to 2005 show that 10% of the population have symptoms. The state of California conducted a survey in 2002 showing that 3.2% of the California residents suffering from this condition. 3.2% in California, that is 1.2 million people. Now, this was done in 2002. This is before smartphones. This is before Wi-Fi. This is before smart meters, which is wireless utility meters that are being installed in people's homes. This is before the exponential increase of our exposure to this radiation. So the levels are for sure higher.
Thank you.
And we also have reproductive harms. We have evidence of correlation to ADD. We have massive human evidence of harm. We've just been looking the other way.
You told us what we are the evidence is. What is the Children's Health Defense?
So recently I joined Robert Kennedy Jr.'s organization called Children's Health Defense. We have been experiencing a massive increase in sickness of children. According to the CDC, 54% of children in the US now having a chronic condition. And there is a reason for that. People got used to have their children sick, but no, that is not okay. That sick has become the new normal. And this is really what we are addressing, the sickness in children. And I joined the organization to lead their projects on Stop 5G and wireless radiation health effects, because this is a major cause for the increase in sickness in children.
Tell us about 5G. How is it making its way to be such a popular marketing term on every TV set in America.
So 1G to 4G, and G stands for generation, are all about connecting people. 5G is a whole different concept. 5G is not about connecting people, it's about connecting things. It is the infrastructure for the Internet of Things. And what it means is that in the next few years, we're going to connect billion more devices. According to the FCC, 20 billion more devices. So every appliance in our house will have a microwave radiation transmitting antenna radiating non-stop. And in order to support this numerous wireless devices, we need more cell towers to be able to transfer that data. And so we're going to add about 800,000 cell towers. And the thing is, now we have 300,000 cell towers a little bit farther away. Those cell towers are being installed on every electric and phone poles on our street, literally feet away from children's bedroom and the same height. And what we've been seeing is that families that had those small cell antennas installed near their homes are becoming sick, not within years, not within months, within days of having those towers installed in front of their homes. This, what we have until now is extremely harmful. We talked about the adverse effects previously. But this is going to have an exponential increase of our exposure to this radiation. Now, you can turn off your cell phone. You cannot turn off these cell towers. Now, this is only 2 layers. We have another layer. So the FCC also planned to allow companies to put satellites. Elon Musk got licensed to put 12,000 satellites into space that will transmit Wi-Fi to every corner of this planet. And he just submitted application for 30,000 more.
Who did this now?
Elon Musk, the chairman of Tesla, and he's also going to take us to a different part. So this technology, 5G technology, we're telling people how great it is because it's going to increase the speeds of download or reduce the download speeds from 8 seconds to 4 seconds. This is not what 5G is about. 5G is about artificial intelligence, collecting the data to be used for artificial intelligence. Elon Musk just launched a company called Neuralink that put implants in your brain to communicate with your wireless devices. Google is working on machines that read your minds, and they will patent your minds, your thoughts. So really where this is all heading is not about download speed. This is about the next step for humanity, which is going into transhumans, where we'll be part humans, part machine. So we are really in a defining moment in our future as humans. And that's why we all need to awaken to what is really going on. We are not being told the truth, and people need to understand that they need to step up and help us stop this insanity and stop the race to more and more technology. I don't want to be a transhuman.
Well, Daphna, you and I are on the same page about justice. Justice is about seeking the truth, and we want the truth to be known, and it takes bold people like you and others to stand up and speak the truth and fight the system. Unfortunately, you have a commercial system that is ingrained with a political system and has influence on a political system. And so often, as you've described, it takes our friends in Israel or even some in Europe to stand up to look at the health concerns of people over the pocketbook concerns of individuals. And we're not there yet here in the U.S., are we?
No, I did a lot of work in Congress on this issue. I lobbied in Congress, in the state legislators, in municipalities. Unfortunately, our legislators are captive by those companies with their big checkbooks. And the only way I can see us winning this is if people will awaken. Our power is with the people. People need to understand that our system does not work, and people will need to take action and help us awaken our legislators to the truth and help us get our rights back. Our rights are being taken away from us, our rights to help, our rights for our civil rights, our human rights, and they're being taken away by the telecommunication industry. We mentioned the Telecommunication Act of 1996 that took a lot of our rights away when it comes to health effects from wireless devices. Now that industry, when it comes to 5G, took our rights to object to installations of cell towers based on almost any reason. In 2018, the FCC passed regulation that take our ability to object the installation of those cell towers near our home, basically on any grounds.
Well, let me stop you there because that's important. So this omnibus legislation that came about in the end of 2017, that was bipartisan in Congress, included this 5G technologies, the carriers and manufacturers in the wireless industry gave them the ability to put these antennas anywhere they wanted to without going through local public bodies such as county supervisors, police jurors, zoning boards. Am I right on that omnibus legislation? So what am I correct? You can agree or disagree.
The omnibus bill basically incorporate into it a few wireless or 5G legislation that calls to promote 5G deployment, and the FCC passed regulation that will basically make it happening.
So have you observed, are you aware that industry is now approaching churches and schools and offering money to put cell towers on top of schools and churches, and really approaching some of the more socially, economically deprived locations and using money to get these towers up to the detriment of the children? Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Is that what 5G is doing?
5G is about taking over a public rights of way, and they're doing it with power, with force. They are addressing those people who would not have the power to object to this technology. Right now they just put Verizon started its project of 5G in schools in Cleveland that are in African American and Latino neighborhoods. They're putting, as you said, cell towers in churches. They're taking all our rights away.
Daphna, how would somebody reach out or contact you today if they wanted to be a part of this process to educate the leaders of America as to the truth of 5G technology and radiation frequencies?
You can go to childrenhealthdefense.org or to wearetheevidence.org.
So Daphna, what is the narrative in America today about the dangers involved with the wireless community and the health of our children and the health of young adults?
I think the narrative is, one, that there's no evidence of harm, where we clearly have the evidence. Most recently, there is a study called the National Toxicology Program study. It's a study funded, $30 million study funded by the Food and Drug Administration to give us the final answer as to whether or not cell phone and wireless technology are harmful. The results came out in 2018 saying the study found clear evidence this radiation is causing cancer and breaks the DNA. So cigarettes cause cancer, this radiation causes cancer and breaks the DNA. And very sadly, a few days after the NTP published its final result, the FDA said, well, this does not apply to humans. So we just spent $30 million of our taxpayer money to test what cell phones do to rats, so we can warn rats not to use cell phones.
Well, let me stop you right there. Didn't the International Association of Research on Cancer release an opinion in 2011 saying that radiation frequencies from cell phones possibly cause gliomas and acoustic neuromas? Am I correct about that?
Yes.
And then, in 2011, the criticism that IARC, that's the acronym, and that's kind of an arm of the World Health Organization, isn't it? Many countries participated in that study.
Right.
In 2000, that was released, the results in 2011. Am I right?
Yes.
And the thing that they were missing, and the reason they called it a possible instead of a probable carcinogen, is because they were lacking animal studies. Is that correct?
Yes,
so the missing link from a possible to a probable was some of the animal evidence. And now the animal evidence is out there that shows the very thing that IARC found in 2011, that there is a causal connection between radiation frequencies in cell phone and gliomas and acoustic neuromas. Am I right? And that's what the animal studies reflected, that the government funded, as you just said, and the results came out in 2018, right?
Very correct.
And now you're telling me they're saying it's because it's animal evidence, not human evidence. But the IARC considers human epidemiology, animal evidence. They consider mechanistic. You know what mechanistic means? What are the causal ways or mechanisms that the cancer is caused?
And by the way, we also have the evidence of a mechanism of harm. 93 out of 100 studies show that this radiation is causing oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is a mechanism that leads to cancer, non-cancer conditions, and DNA damage.
Yeah. Well, the real interesting thing was that the NTP study showed that it did break the DNA strands, which has been an argument for years, that you can't have cancer unless you break the DNA, which you know and I know is not true. Am I correct? But it did in fact break the DNA in the animal studies.
And they said it's clear, and not only in that, while the FDA now tells us that this study should be disregarded because it doesn't apply to humans, it's animals. And by the way, the tobacco industry did exactly the same thing. They said that those animal studies do not apply to humans. But we use animal studies to regulate about humans. That's exactly why we do animal studies. And I think that when it comes to DNA, the NTP study found nothing new. The evidence that this radiation breaks the DNA goes back to 1996, but we're still being told that there's no evidence.
Well, just so the audience understands, all of the regulatory bodies, when they conduct tests to determine whether a drug should be on the market, a product should be on the market, they only use animal studies to make that determination, because you don't treat human beings as guinea pigs. Am I correct?
Correct.
So for them to come out and say, oh, that's an animal study and not a human study, is just their effort to control a marketing narrative that you and I know, and I think the audience does today, is false. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct.
What else is going on, Daphna, to get the truth out?
Well, I think the other narrative our government is using is, we have to win the race to 5G. Those very forceful narratives. And the excuse for the deployment of 5G is the Cold War with China. So we need to win on the 5G race over China. The thing is, I think that is literally idiocy. So yes, let's kill our own children before the Chinese kill our children.
It doesn't make any sense. And the China analogy is simply a marketing ploy for all of these newcomers into the industry of the wireless community, right?
Yeah.
And many of the newcomers are buying up the old industry because they want to do the things that you just said earlier today, and that is they want to put devices in our brains and in our body to where they adjust the human nature of people on this earth.
There's the chief scientist for Google. His name is Ray Kurzweil. He wrote a series of books on how we're all going to become transhumans, and I recommend people read the book, The Age of Singularity. That will give us all an idea where we're really heading, unless people like you and me will stop this insanity.
Tell us once again, Daphna, how can the public reach you?
You can go to children'shealthdefense.org or wearetheevidence.org.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you very much for all your work.